Welcome, eCom Logistics Nation. Thank you for joining today's episode. We're on a mission to share e-commerce logistics insights, trends, successes, and challenges from the leaders and innovators in our space.
When I joined Burberry, I was also very lucky because we got this very charismatic leader called Angela Ahrendts, who is really the person who transformed Burberry, created this revolution. And again, it was not about customer centricity, it was about obsession for customers, to the point that we never thought our boss was Angela or was our leaders. We thought our boss was the stores.
Welcome, friends, to the eCom Logistics Podcast, and thank you for joining us today. Nanad and I are excited to be joined by Andreu Marco, a global chief operating officer in the retail space. Andreu has spent over 25 years in supply chain. 16 and a half years of his career was spent at Burberry, where he rose to global senior VP of supply chain. Other very noteworthy experience was with Inditex, and he also has been sharing his experience and expertise as an associated supply chain professor. Andreu, it's great to have you join us today, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you, Tim. I'm very excited about the opportunity.
Super excited to have you on the call. Lots to talk about. Luxury brands, that's what we are going to be focused on.
Yes.
Luxury brands. But Inditex, right? That's the same company that owns Zara and also owns, I know in your history, right? But I just want to touch on that. That's the company that owns Zara, and you were responsible for the luxury brand underneath that?
Yes. So look, Inditex owns different brands. The most popular one is Zara, of course, but it has Massimo Dutti, Bershka, Pull&Bear, Stradivarius. So it's by far the biggest Spanish retail company. And I would say it's number one in the world. I think the interesting thing for me, and again, I just have been very lucky that I had the opportunity to work for Inditex during 4 years, because Inditex is considered the number one supply chain organization in the world. I don't think anybody is able to do things as fast and in a better way than Inditex when it comes to supply chain. So I was very young. I was in my 20s. I was finishing college, and I got this call from Massimo Dutti, which is the number two company in the group. And they offered me a job running supply chain or running a part of supply chain. It was an incredible experience to work with these professionals, and especially with the Inditex model, which is all about supply chain. I will argue Inditex could be doing furniture or automotive or pharmacy, and they will be as successful as they are, because the model is about how they treat vendors, how they treat upstream supply chain. And then on the other hand, their incredible customer centricity, which nowadays we talk about it, but 20, 30 years ago, nobody was talking about this in the past. Very lucky to be learning. And I will say I studied at the university and I did a lot of supply chain at college. And I never learned as many things as I did in Inditex during all my career.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And maybe that's where a quote I heard you give not too long ago was supply chain needs to be servant to the consumer. And one of the things I wanted to ask you was, like, where did that philosophy and North Star come from? Because you've led like really big omni-channel transformation projects. And in hearing what you've written and hearing what you've stated in the past, it always feels like you are starting with the customer, that experience, and you're working backwards, making sure that right infrastructure and supply chain technology is all in place. So can you share more about, maybe that's where it started, but where you've really built that philosophy for yourself?
Yes, Dan. Thank you for the question. Look, it's very simple. I work personally with Amancio Ortega, which is the owner and the founder of Inditex, which is not very strange because he's the most humble person in the universe. And you will see him even now in Zara walking and talking with everybody. So what he told us, and I'm talking about 25 years ago, what he told us is you need to have customers in one hand, and then you need to have vendors in the other hand. That's how you manage the business. What happened after that was, and then I worked with very strong professionals, Abel Lopez from Inditex, which is a person that I learned a lot from him. After that, when I joined Burberry, I was also very lucky because we got this very charismatic leader called Angela Ahrendts, who is really the person who transformed Burberry, who created this revolution. And again, it was not about customer centricity. It was about obsession for customers, to the point that we never thought our boss was Angela or was our leaders. We thought our boss was the stores. I can tell you, Dan, that I remember in Inditex, we were all in supply chain. We were all very afraid of the store managers, because if the store manager of Dubai Mall will call Amancio Ortega, the owner, and he will complain about supply chain, we will be in big trouble.
Okay.
And I remember very well that this happened to me when I joined the company. I remember that the Dubai Mall manager called the company to say, "Oh, I'm very disappointed with Andreu. The delivery has arrived 15 minutes late." And I was like, "It's only 15 minutes." And that's when I learned the big lesson. They almost killed me to say, "What do you mean? 15 minutes of sales in Dubai Mall? That's a lot."
Right.
Do you realize? Yep. So that put things in context, which is in Inditex, it's all about the speed and speed to market. And it's all about vendors in one side, customer centricity in the other side. That's the secret of their success. And many companies have tried to copy Inditex model and they haven't been successful. You can think about companies like Gap or H&M. Of course, they are successful companies, but nobody has been able to do what the Inditex does when it comes to supply chain.
Yeah, that I'll have to say, as a consumer, like I always wonder about the supply chains because I work in supply chain. And to the point, right? Dubai Mall. I was actually in Dubai Mall maybe 2 months ago. And you see the Zaras of the world in that footprint, and you go to India and I see Zara there, and you could be any part of Middle East and you see a store there. You are hearing about all the exodus of companies from Russia as an example, that mandated, non-mandated, but them leaving, and it's like Zara is one of the brands that's doing that. And it's almost like any part of the world. Again, Gap's been extremely successful as a company, but you don't see that type of footprint. And that's one of the driving forces, has to be the supply chain to get the products where they need to be around the globe, and what it takes to operate a supply chain of that nature. So I'm absolutely dumbfounded by the level of what it is, right? And again, a lot of it is fast fashion. Fast fashion is, relatively speaking, not as much margin. So you need that supply chain to be tight while getting it there on time. Your experience as you move into Burberry, I'm sure it changes a little bit, or the perspective changes, right? Or what is it that you took from Inditex to Burberry? And of course, you started from a director position and you led the supply chain over there. Like, how did it inspire you to do the transformation there?
Yeah, thank you, Nina. Look, it's exactly when you ask, what do you take from Inditex? I would say all the learnings. It was very interesting because the luxury world, I would say, is one of the most inefficient supply chains areas that you can imagine. So why? Because they have big margins. So they never know, in luxury, you never know how much money you're leaving on the table because you get money anywhere. In Inditex, if you make a mistake, you're out of the company, but also the company could disappear because the margins are very tight. So it was really a very interesting opportunity for me to be able to apply a lot of the learnings of the Inditex model, particularly around speed and customer centricity in a very old-fashioned luxury company, which was Burberry 20 years ago. And I was very lucky because I had the opportunity to work with Angela Ahrendts, which I mentioned before. I consider her the most charismatic leader in retail in the last 100 years. Oh. And so I was very lucky to work with her. I also had the opportunity to work with people like Andy Janowski and Roberto Canevari, who were the chief operations globally. And again, they gave me the opportunity to implement a lot of the learnings from this Inditex model into the luxury industry. And the thing that changed in Burberry was the Omni Channel and the digitalization of the company. And let me explain you this. In 2008, when we had the big crisis in the world, Burberry was totally bankrupt. We didn't have money. Burberry is not part of any group. We didn't have cash. So we were in a meeting with Angela and we said, okay, what do we do? Because we cannot get more stores. We cannot buy factories. We cannot get even better product. And the only thing that we decided that we could do was digitalization and Omni Channel. And when we presented this to the investors, they were saying like, you guys are crazy. Nobody's going to buy luxury products online. Why do you think somebody is going to buy luxury online? And we said, yes, we may be crazy. It's also that we don't have many options. We don't have many other alternatives. We just have to do this one because we believe that we can do it. And we also thought this is very disruptional and very different. And we went to see people like Zappos in the US that they were doing a very different business model. And then we started talking with Farfetch and Net-a-Porter and Yoox. And Burberry was the first brand to enter into Farfetch. And all our competitors were saying publicly in the newspapers, they were saying, these guys are going to kill the brand. How can they be in these platforms? This is absolutely the most stupid idea and it's never going to work. And even from a supply chain point of view, it's not going to work. And what we did, especially from a supply chain point of view, was to say, okay, the decision is inventory belongs to customer. We put the customer at the center. And that means that we have to change the dynamics of the company, which for 150 years were built around building channels, wholesale, travel retail, e-commerce.
Yep.
And we eliminated all these artificial barriers that the company built during many years. And we said, our role here is to eliminate frictions. Our role is to give access to customers who may want to buy in Nordstrom.com, or they want to buy in Net-a-Porter or in Farfetch or in Burberry.com or in the store. It doesn't matter. They want to buy one of our products. Of course, we will have different margin, different commercial agreements. But in reality, from a supply chain point of view, that's not our problem. Our problem is to eliminate frictions so these customers can access to this product, even if they are buying in a different company, but it's still something that is generating revenue for our company and is still protecting the brand integrity. So that was very interesting because let's say we had a civil war in the company because we were challenging the model that existed, right? So we were saying people may want to buy something online, but they want to try it in the store. Or people may want to go to the store to try something and then buy it in Farfetch.com or in Shinsegae if they're in South Korea because they have the loyalty points from Shinsegae. So that was not easy because, again, internally in our company, we had people saying, wait a minute, my people is going to lose commission. Why are we helping other companies to grow, or why are we helping other B2B2C platforms to grow instead of trying to grow our own online business? And I was very lucky because I had the support from Angela and from Roberto Canevari when we were saying, guys, you need to support us in supply chain because the company is not ready for this change. We're putting the customer at the center, yes, but the company is not ready for that. And then we went to the US and we spoke with people from Nordstrom, from Bloomingdale's, and they were saying like, yeah, we're having the same problem. In Nordstrom, they were saying, we are trying to use the inventory that we have in the stores for online fulfillment because obviously we can deliver that in 1 hour. We have problems with our own employees in the stores because they don't want to give us the inventory.
You know what? Everything that you just explained, like literally every sentence I want to double click on, and I think we're going to run out of time, but I just want to say this, like you mentioned that 2008 timeframe, 2007, right? Like I remember being in the field, kind of young, right? Analyst in the industry working, and Omni Channel started becoming the buzz. But the challenge with Omni Channel was exactly what you're describing. And this applied to retailers alike, right? To the point that you're making. It applied to manufacturers. It applied to everyone. Was Omni Channel transformation meant digital transformation, supply chain transformation, people transformation. You are essentially looking at a company-wide transformation because most companies before that looked at e-commerce as this, or I mention e-commerce as just one channel, but one distribution channel, and I'm going to build my own warehouses that are going to be just e-commerce, or there's going to be this little thing in the corner that's going to do e-commerce and deliver stuff. And now we are talking about buy anything anywhere and get it delivered anywhere. and be able to have that experience. So just getting into it a little bit into the detail from your perspective, how did you manage to put that customer in the center, that leadership change? Because there are still a lot of companies struggling with that, where there are silos today. How did you break that barrier from a leadership perspective?
Look, the key word here is leadership and engagement with people. So it's not easy because, again, you're challenging operating models that have been there forever. And it's also a lot easier when you are talking with companies that are digital, they're more digital. So I don't think Jux or Farfetch had these problems because they were digital from the beginning. But instead, most of the retailers who were very strong in offline, this is where the problem came out very strongly. And at the end of the day, it's more, if you are a customer-centric organization and if you care about growth instead of cost, this is where you see the big difference. Because I can tell you the last mile delivery and the immediate delivery is something that you need to be very strong in terms of how you approach this. Because in some cases, it's going to be difficult to justify it. And going back to my Inditex times, I remember when I joined Inditex, we were hiring chartered planes. So that's how we were. Like, how many planes are you going to hire today? Do you have a space in the 747-300? Because we have 2 containers that we need to send to. So one thing that I learned in Inditex is that speed to market is always the winning card, because in our competitors in Inditex and also in Burberry, while they were sending the products by sea and they were saying let's pay the cheapest transportation rates, we were doing exactly the opposite. We were saying we're going to win with speed to market, and what will happen is that we will not be leftovers with inventory. So the conversation about working capital, and Angela Arendt told me one time, less is more. And I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, less inventory is more. We can sell a lot more with less inventory. So I remember when I joined Burberry, we had 36 distribution centers. When I left, we had 2 globally.
Wow.
And the key for that, so you can imagine, and you can check in the reviews or in the communication that we were doing with investors, we were dramatically reducing our inventory and our working capital while we were increasing sales. How did we achieve that? Very simple. We were putting all the inventory that we had in the company, including vendors, including goods in transit, including stores, including B2B, B2C partners. We were putting all of this inventory at the service of customers. And then we were giving some work to the commercial people to say, you find a way to deal with the commissions or the remuneration of that model. Because in reality, we don't care. We know that there is a person with a credit card ready to buy our product. It's not in the channel that we expect it to be.
Yeah.
Who cares? We still want to do the transaction.
That is phenomenal. That number 36-2. Does that not include some 3PLs you worked with, or is it 36-2?
The company that I found when I joined Burberry, it was every single country was operating in isolation, and every single category was operating in isolation. So what we did in supply chain was to create a global organization, a global matrix organization. We eliminated all these silos. And then I remember I spent my first years going country by country saying, hi, good afternoon, my name is Andreu Marco, and I'm here to close this distribution center. And I'm going to explain you why it's going to be good for you. Keep in mind that Inditex operates with one global hub in one of the most complicated logistically places in Spain, which is Galicia, is La Coruña. Yep. They're in it's not a good logistics place. There are not big airports or ports around there. And they manage the whole war over from there. The reason why Inditex didn't open Australia until 15 years ago, because we wanted to open Australia even when I was there 25 years ago. And the reason why it took them like 10 years to do it is because they will never open a country or a store unless they are able to deliver in 1 or 2 days. So
Wow.
That's the reason why. So they go from Spain to Melbourne store in 48 hours. So in Burberry, we did something very similar, which is, guys, we have even a better opportunity because our products are more expensive. We have more margin. So stop all these conversations about trying to save money on transportation. It's the other way around. Spend money on transportation in a good way, but deliver the product, win with the speed to market. And in luxury, you have the runway and then you have the products. So we were always like, why is Inditex able to go to present the product in the stores faster than anybody else? And in Burberry, we say, okay, we're going to do this. We have to go very quickly from the runway to the product to be in the store. And we were doing crazy things like allowing people that was watching the runway live, and we were allowing people to buy online and delivering the product in 1 or 2 weeks.
Wow. So again, I would assume Burberry was very heavily reliant on air freight transportation as well. Then from a trans standpoint, not a lot of ocean ship containers carrying Burberry products.
Yeah, look, there is a problem here. I always mention to all my team, which is sustainability is something that we need to work. And look, in supply chain, we need to find a solution for air transportation, but we also need to find a solution for immediate deliveries. When you have Amazon coming to your door 3 or 5 times per day, you realize there is something wrong here. And I think we need to learn, because there are some countries, and I can tell you, countries like Brazil or countries like China or even Russia, where deliveries, the immediate delivery is really amazing. You order something and you have it in 15 minutes in your door.
Yep.
In Europe and in the US, I don't think we're there. And we think we're very good, but in reality, we're not. But there is a problem that in the industry we need to solve, which is sustainability. And I know there are a lot of initiatives, and all the companies that I have worked for, ESG has been absolutely fundamental. But let's be clear, we're moving products around, we're manufacturing products in different countries. And so there are some challenges around this.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that you got ahead of my question, because you saw where I was going with that. But that makes complete sense. And some of the countries that you just mentioned, it's also the labor cost, right? So the labor to deliver is so cheap. I mentioned I was in Dubai a couple of months ago, and before that I was in India. And I have to say, the delivery speed for anything that you need is 15 minutes, 20 minutes. But it's also people on mopeds just zipping around through the city, just delivering. And it almost seems like there is people on mopeds doing delivery, probably the same number of people that are on the road going from point A to point B. It's pretty phenomenal to see that. And I think the impact on the last mile is not as much, but when you look at air freight transportation, it definitely is. But it solves for that very particular problem. Like, why do people purchase Burberry? They want it now. When they see it on the runway, they want it. Or when they are in the store and they see it, they want it. So that makes a lot of sense. Maybe just a follow-on or a connecting question around store fulfillment. You mentioned earlier on, right? Like when you got into Omni Channel, one of the challenges was the employees, right? Like that work at the store. Now you are asking them to do more things. And very interestingly, last week I was at the Manifest conference in Las Vegas. And at the conference, the CEO of Quiet Logistics, who used to be the chief supply chain officer of American Eagle, was speaking on the stage and kind of talks about store fulfillment. Everyone wants to do it, but there are challenges, right? Do you want to focus on the customer, or do you want that person to pick an order in the back office? And how much assortment can you keep? What's your perspective? How did you think about it and the challenges you faced at Burberry?
Yeah, look, store fulfillment in most companies, in most big retailers, it's still 70, 80%, right? So we talk a lot about digital and digital deliveries and fast deliveries, but let's don't forget that most of customers are still buying 80% of their transactions happen in an offline location. So this is why it's very relevant. In my opinion, the concept of eliminating frictions from the customer has to apply also in offline. And the most interesting thing is, how can supply chain help the stores? I can tell you that in Burberry, we decided that the back of house was part of supply chain. And again, it was a big decision. It was a big challenge. But At some point, we said we have inventory in back of house. We're doing some operations in the back of house. We want to ensure that the people in the store is 100% in the floor selling and taking care of the ceremony of selling to the customer. So that means that supply chain needs to help with everything else. So this involves things like doing night deliveries. And Inditex invented this model 20 years ago. It was the first retail company that started to deliver at night. But then in Burberry, what we were doing is we take care of the back of house. And in some cities like New York, London, Hong Kong, Shanghai, what we did was we created a small local fulfillment centers, which is not to be confused with our house, because it was really a trans-shipping point and a place for small operations. So, for example, we were doing alterations. We were doing replenishment. When you have stores in places like Galeries Lafayette or in Nordstrom in key locations, you know that you probably have a concession or a shop-in-shop. So you have very limited space there, and you need to have replenishment more than once a day. So you cannot do that from abroad, from another country. You have to find a solution. So basically, what we did in key cities was to say, number one, we take control of all the operations in the stores. And that's going back to the concept of, in one hand, we manage upstream supply chain with vendors. In the other hand, of course, we manage manufacturing, distribution, planning, and transportation. But we also say we want to manage, or we want to help with the back of house management. And not to be confused with the deals in the store or what happened in the store.
Exactly.
And that was very successful because, again, in the key cities, what we did was to say, okay, why don't we downsize the back of house in very expensive locations? Imagine Canton Road in Hong Kong or Fifth Avenue in New York. So we said, why don't we eliminate the back of house and we create something that can help 10 different stores? So it's the back of house of 10 stores in a place in Queens, in New York, or in New Jersey, in New York, or in a location that is 10 miles away from the real estate. So that was also very successful. And interestingly, it was very good to reduce the cost, to also increase availability and reduce working capital.
So these are, I would say, micro-fulfillment before the word micro-fulfillment became a thing, right? Like it's micro-replen houses. These are back of house in key real estate positions that are more centralized. They are replenning the stores, replenning the other channels that you might be selling through, let's say Nordstrom, Macy's, whoever is out there, but then also doing consumer deliveries?
Yeah, they were doing everything. Let me give you an example. In London, we were doing Heathrow. It's a very important shopping center, Heathrow Airport. And Burberry we had 3 stores in Heathrow. So we were able to offer this service to customers that were in Heathrow waiting for the flight. And they will go to the store. And normally it will be an Asian consumer trying a trench coat. And they were like, oh, I want to buy it. It's $2,000, but it needs alterations. It doesn't fit. Yeah. So we will do alterations within 30 minutes. Just because we have this local fulfillment center very close to the airport. And you cannot imagine how many sales we were able to save. Because in the past, customers were saying, I want to buy it, but I'm not going to take it to Hong Kong because they don't know how to do the alterations. So we were doing that for them, and it became very famous. And as you are saying, we were using that pool of inventory, a central pool of inventory in London, in a small distribution center, to do all channels. We were doing travel retail. We were doing online deliveries in central London in less than 1 hour. We were doing replenishment of Harrods and Selfridges. And we were doing replenishment of the offline network. So at the end of the day, what is important is stores need to be focused on selling and the ceremony of selling. We in supply chain, we need to help them with everything. And the back of house will never be managed in a better way than by a supply chain person.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just talking about the general industry, getting a little away from the luxury brand, like there has been significant amount of investment from venture capital into digital organizations, etc., in this rapid fulfillment, micro fulfillment type of strategy. Now, you do have to say Burberry is unique with the margins that it has, that you can do the things that you were able to do. But as you look at general merchandise, health and wellness as an example, right? How do you see that type of where the margins are lower, but the consumer expectations, and it's Amazon and these other brands setting the tone. And if anyone else other than Amazon and Walmart, specifically in North America, is pulling off a 1 hour, 2 hour delivery for general merchandise or nutraceuticals or health and wellness products, chances are they are spending the VC money right now on actually making it happen to get to scale. How do you see the perspective of a 2 hour in low margin products, 3 hours same day in the low margin? Because there is the unit economics has started to come, the chickens are coming to roost, right? Like it's actually starting to happen where it is really hard to do in different markets, different strategies. But I want your opinion. Like now you have a newer perspective. What do you think about that type of omni-channel where a consumer needs something in 2 hours, but the margins are really low?
So Ninad, the answer is two words. One is technology and the other one is consolidation. So I can tell you, for most of the retail brands, we are in the same high streets in the world. We're in the same shopping centers. So does it really make sense that every single brand has to replenish that store with their own facility, with their own trucks and their own infrastructure? It really doesn't. And in reality, we're not competing with that. So what's the problem of getting very strong with consolidation? So I think that's a key word. The second word is technology. And I give you the example of Uber. So we can Uberize the deliveries, the last mile deliveries, and we can consolidate it. Even for companies like Amazon, there is an opportunity. When I see Amazon coming to my door in the morning 3 times, I'm thinking they have a problem. I think there is a massive opportunity, and I'm working right now I'm doing a lot of work with my team on this now because I think that's the future. I agree. We should not be in the company that I work. It can be luxury or fast market. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, we want solutions for customers. And the question is, are customers ready to pay for the service that I'm providing? If it is a very expensive service, they're not going to take it.
Agreed. It seems like you've been talking to Quiet Logistics, because I don't know if you heard, because I don't think if you're working in supply chain, you can miss Shaker because he's all over the place talking about this stuff. And I agree with you. It makes sense, right? Like it makes a lot of sense. It's got to happen at scale. It's got to happen, that consolidation has to happen at scale.
Yeah.
2 or 3 companies joining hands together, it still does not give you the unit economics. You need something much more powerful, and it's good for the environment. So yeah, I'm all game for it.
And we have very strong consumers, very educated consumers now, right? So that consumers, they have a phone in their hands, they are checking prices, they are checking quality, but they are also very interested in sustainability. So if you disappoint them with what you're doing, they will not shop to you. Right now, we are exploring companies that are doing last mile delivery in an ecological way, so bicycles and in a green way. And look, there is of course, we want to do this because we care a lot about the environment. But I can tell you, it's also from a commercial point of view, this is a big deal. If we tell customer, this is a green delivery, we're going to sell more for sure.
Yeah, agreed. Just one little anecdote about the bicycles. So with work from home, I don't go to downtown Toronto too often, but I ended up going this week, and like for the first time, I see those mopeds that you see in like Asian countries. All of a sudden, there's all of these moped delivery services that are all over the city. I'm like, what happened? They didn't exist 6 months ago. And by the way, it's, speaking in Celsius, it's like negative 15 degrees. And there are people on mopeds just driving around doing deliveries. I'm like, all the power to you guys, right? Good for the environment. I'm good for that.
I think in Europe and in the US, we have this problem, and that we're a little arrogant in the industry. We think that we know more than everybody. In reality, I get a lot of inspiration in places like India, Brazil, and China, because they And of course, COVID changed everything, particularly in the Omni Channel world. We had to. But the inspiration is not in Europe or in the US. The inspiration is in these places where people is able to get products and services in 15 minutes. And here we're talking about next day delivery or 1 hour delivery. So it's a long way to go.
Necessity is the mother of all inventions in supply chain. I'll tell you, they have a different problem and they solved for it. So I think taking inspirations from them, completely agree with you.
Completely. And I think, Andrew, as I've been listening to you and Ninad, one of the things, that we often see and hear, and you've said it so many times about the cooperation and partnership between operations and technology. And I think what we see so much today, and even the past decade or so, is very siloed operations, right? So you have very operation-centric organizations. You have others that lean into technology first. Everything I'm hearing you talk about is about this partnership and IT, technology, and operations working together to make the most optimal supply chain experience for the customer. Do you agree with that? Do you think it's vitally important? What's your approach there from that kind of breaking down silos or breaking down to make sure that organizations could work together from an ops and technology perspective?
Yes, and look, I can tell you, my best friends in life are in the tech industry. And in all the companies I have worked with, it's not by chance. I do put a lot of attention and I make a big effort in terms of building bridges with our tech partners. Again, I've been very lucky, but I remember that for some reason, every time I arrive to a company, they always tell me, "Oh, we are glad, Andreu, that you are here because your approach to tech and to IT is very different from what we had in the past. In the past, it was a civil war every day, right. And tech and supply chain were always fighting." I really cannot understand that. I really cannot imagine any supply chain organization in the world that is not best friend of the technology partners. And if the technology partners happen to be very customer centric, which I have been very lucky that has been my case, then everything flies. Because nowadays, I could say 20 years ago, it was not that relevant. Nowadays, it's absolutely critical. It's impossible to be successful in supply chain unless you understand tech. And I'm saying like you need to understand the architecture of systems, and you need to understand more. Nowadays, you need to understand more about tech than about anything else. So for people like me, which is I'm not starting my career, so it's constant recycling myself and my team. And I'm learning a lot, and I've been learning a lot during the last years because there has been a revolution in the way tech operates. But it's fundamentally important that tech and supply chain are together because they are very cross-functional. You can see that they operate almost in every part of the company. And my experience is when we achieve that magic between tech and supply chain, absolutely things fly.
Absolutely. And just to turn it on, I come from the tech side of the universe, and it's to the point that was made about supply chain has to understand tech to the level of architecture, right? Like you need to understand how things connect from a system standpoint. But then there's the other side that tech needs to understand supply chain and its architecture of how things connect and why and where the value happens to be. And when, both that, again, even down to the software developer level, right? If they understand why I'm doing what I'm doing, there is a direct impact on the solution. Gone are the days of multi-year initiatives. Like I've actually been involved in projects where one warehouse implementation would take 2 years. Not joking. 2 years to just implement a warehouse management system inside a building. A forecasting and replenishment system, 2.5-year initiative. We can't be doing that anymore, right? Like it has to be faster. And yes, the revolution's definitely helping on that front. Again, that's an opinion, not a question. Just got excited about what you were saying.
No, and I fully agree, Nina, because look, I did 3 SAP implementations, for example. if you ask me to do another SAP implementation, I will run away. I will say, no way. I don't want to lose my hair, the little one that I have. Yeah, and I agree. It's a very different model now. And I have learned a lot in the last 5 years about it's not going to be a perfect model. It's an MVP, but it will work and then you will make it perfect.
Absolutely. Love the term MVP.
Yep.
Just keep the ball rolling forward. That's it.
Andreu, this has been an absolutely amazing conversation. Really appreciate your time and all the insights and collaboration. How do people learn more about you? Maybe follow you if you want to share how someone could reach out to you, maybe follow you on any of your social network.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very strong in LinkedIn. That's the one that I use more, is Andreu Marco in LinkedIn. I don't think there are many Andreu Marcos with you, Andreu, with you at the end. As you know, I'm also an associate professor of supply chain, but I'm very keen. For me, the most important thing is career development. So I'm really passionate about helping young people and young professionals. I can tell you that if you ask me what is the thing that you are more proud in your career, I will tell you people like Andrew Corner, who is now global SVP of supply chain in Nike in Portland. He worked for me, and I'm super proud that I helped him. Wei Chen, which is a person that is also incredible. He's VP of supply chain for Estée Lauder UK. And it's also somebody that I had the opportunity to develop as a leader. And then I have Carol Mack in Hong Kong. I have Tatiana Kane in Spain. A lot of people that worked for me before, and they are even in higher positions than me. That's absolutely, and I'm saying like, I will not stop until you become the global CEO of a big multinational company. It's really very encouraging to be able to help young supply chain professionals. A lot of women, and they are now in top positions now, and a lot of diversity, because I always had very diverse and multinational teams. So again, I was very happy, very lucky with my bosses and with the leaders that I had, and I mentioned them before, but I also have been very lucky with the teams that have been working for me. So very happy supply chain life.
I love that.
That's phenomenal, man. Phenomenal. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you. I really look forward to a chat some other day as well. As your career progresses, we are going to keep a very close eye on the things that you do.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you, guys. I really enjoy also participating. So thank you for the opportunity.
Hi, I'm Ninad Acharya, CEO and co-founder of Fulfillment IQ. And I'm here with
Dan Call, CRO and partner at Fulfillment IQ. We're the team behind the eCom Logistics podcast. Our mission is to provide you with genuine insights from our work alongside logistics leaders to help you improve your supply chain.
In the eCom Logistics podcast, we share the knowledge and the insights we've gained from working alongside amazing brands, retailers, 3PLs, and VCs, so you can make the most out of your supply chain journey.
If you like what you're hearing, we'd truly appreciate your support with a 5-star rating on your favorite podcasting channel. Your feedback not only keeps us going, but also helps others find the podcast. If you think Fulfillment IQ can assist you, or if you have an idea related to logistics, just reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm always up for a chat and ready to explore new possibilities together.
Stay tuned to the eCom Logistics podcast on your favorite podcast platform for fresh and practical insights into e-commerce and logistics. Until next time, let's keep making a difference in logistics together.